18 years old, we farmed here, but, well, up until I was 18. And then I took my grandmother down to Alabama because she had a brother down there that she hadn't seen or heard from for 17 years. But when my sister got old enough, she started looking up in the family tree. He started out, he was a plumber in North Dakota. And he had 2 children, a boy and a girl. And when the girl was born, the boy was born first, and the girl, and his wife died, I don't know, like 9 days after the baby was born or something. So then he had a lady that her husband got killed in the train accident. He was an engineer on the old steam engines, you know, between Devil's Lake and I forget what, Minot or something, but they hit head on and he got killed. And so she was to take care of his kids. Well, it ended up he married her. And then in the meantime, they moved to, where did they? Oh, they moved to Tampa, Florida. And then from there, they moved to Auburn, Alabama. And that's when we got contact with them, and that's when I went down there and took my grandma along, and her and her brother were like 2 little kids hugging each other, you know, and she says to him, well, how come you didn't write or something? And he says, well, I was all right, there was nothing wrong, so he didn't think he had a right. But what made her think he was dead is because when he moved to Tampa, there was a big flood, and from then on, she never heard from him. See, back then there wasn't news like now. She thought he drowned in that flood. But anyway, this all then. So then I went, when I took her down there, then I stayed, and well, then he had to borrow money to go down there, and well, his daughter was a school teacher in Tuskegee, Alabama. And that time they were just starting to build at Tuskegee Air Base, you know, for training them black pilots. And she knew some guys out on the job or something. So she actually helped me get that job through, like almost like politics, you know. She knew the teacher, and so I came out there, and they gave me a big title name. I was assistant equipment inspector for the whole base. There's 1,100 acres, and of course then there was only through dozers, and dozed the trees down in the buildings and everything, dozed them in a big pile and burned them, and then the equipment starts coming in, and then I used to have to go down, always if they come by rail, I'd have to go down the rail, and I usually took a mechanic along, and we'd inspect the machine, what condition it was in, because that was all cost plus. The government was renting all these machines, and they had to be returned in as good a shape or better. So then there's a lot of paperwork to check off. And then, like first on the base, when I got that job, I worked in the shop where they repaired the equipment, and I'd have to, then too, the employees had a number, you know, that you went by. Like mine was 280, I remember. And I'd have to put that number down and the guy's name and how many hours he worked on a transmission or whatever it was, you know, and on what machine and all that kind of stuff. And then after that, they put me out in the field, you know, and I told them, I said, I had no high school education even. I said, how am I going to handle a job like that? But I had a good guy down there, even though he was a rebel. See, the draft, when I was 18, the draft was 21. You'd be 21 to register for draft. Well, then, while I was down in Alabama in 42, then they changed it to 18. So then I had to register for draft. And when I was registering there, the lady that filled it out says to me that I automatically get 6-month deferment. And I says, well, what do I do after the 6 months are up. She says, well, you got to reapply. Well, I think by that time we were pretty much done with there. We were supposed to go on a job, I don't know, in Georgia, I think it was, but I never applied for any more deferment. And a couple of days later, I got you have been selected, so I was a select man. And I was inducted on the 22nd of February in 1943, and as an active duty on March 3rd. And then I had 12 weeks of basic training in Camp Campbell, Kentucky. It wasn't fort, it was Camp the Old Shacks. And then after the 12 weeks, then I got sent to Fort Meade, Maryland. And I was kind of like, for me, it was kind of lost sheep because I trained in the 20th Armored Division, and then they took me out of that and sent me to a replacement depot in Fort Meade, Maryland. So then there I worked Italian and German prisoners of war. And I was there till December 10th. They sent me to Camp Patrick Henry and got on the ship. James Parker was a little like a fishing boat almost. and then it took us, that was December 10th, that they got to Naples, Italy about December 21st, I guess it was. And well, then from there I went down to the Volturno Valley Replacement Depot number 1. Well, then from there I got sent out on some duties and then back to the duties. You know, once I was up at St. Agatha, that was a little thing. I was supposed to build perimeter tents for the officers that were being trained on. Well, then from there, I was at Naples and then Anzio and Rome, and then with Montecatini, Italy. And somewhere along the line I was in Leghorn too. But before the war was over with in Japan, but it was over with in Europe, then we were loading the ship in Leghorn, Italy, to ship out to go to Manila. And then they put me on the 185th Engineers. See, so I got swept around from one place to another all the time, and no good place to get any rating, because every place I went, they were full. Anyways, we were on our way then to Manila after we got loaded, and about, I don't know, when we went through the straits there, then they got the skipper come out and gave us orders, and they announced on the ship we're still going to Manila. Well, then about the middle of the trip, I don't know where, out in the ocean anyway, then they announced that they dropped the H-bomb and the war was over with in Japan, so we'll no longer be going to Manila. We're going to go to the nearest harbor. All the ships are supposed to be called into the nearest harbor, so I got into Boston, and then from there I go. Well, I was supposed to go to Camp McCoy, but that was about, we got 30 days leave because when the war was over with, everything was snafu, and to get everything together. And then, anyway, it ended up that I was home 6 weeks, and then I went to Camp McCoy to get discharged, but they went by the point system, and being I wasn't in the direct combat, I was in the rear echelon, the next back. So I didn't have as many points as those that were in the direct combat, and So I stayed in till, I got out February 26th, I think it was, in 1946. My first thing working with those prisoners of war, it wasn't bad like people, or I think what some people think, that they were all mean or people. They were like you and I, because I know I asked one of the Germans one time, prisoners, I said, what did you do when you lived in Germany? And he said he was a farmer. And I said, well, what happened to your farm when you went to service? And he says, my wife had to run it. It's like I said, here, the farmer's got a deferment, but not there. And I don't know, the Italians, they were kind of connected with the mafia, I think. They were always trying to make some kind of deal, So, and then one at that, even when I was in Fort Meade, that's when we had one. He was the guy that was firing our stoves in the wintertime to keep us warm. They just let him, he was free to go any place. But where were they going to go, though, when you think about that?
You received a Good Conduct Medal?
Yeah.
American Theater Service Medal?
Yeah.
European, African, Middle Eastern Theater Service Medal? And one Overseas Service Bar.
Yeah, I guess, one. Yeah.
And that's the ones that are showed in your display case.
Yeah, and then, overseas I was in the 5th Army and this replacement stuff, but Blood and Guts was in charge of that, and then Eisenhower was our general. We were, for my end of it. I guess that's why I voted for him when he ran for president, because I thought he was a good general, and he was a good man. He had a lot of brains, that man, just like John McCain. He wasn't my party man, but he was a smart man, that John. And that's what bugs me when the president says, well, he was in prison, he didn't do any fighting. Well, the president knows nothing about a prison camp, because their prison camp, they were tortured even worse than fighting, So that's the part that I don't like about that man. When I came home, I had no profession and no trade and no money, and I think the first job I got, I worked at the cheese factory here. Joey Pond and I were waxing the big 70-some pound chunks of cheese. And I got 75 cents an hour, I remember that. That was to support my wife on that too. Of course, I got $20-some from the government for being married. I had to give up $22 of my $50 a month, and the government gave her $28, so she got a check for $50 a month, and then I was $22 short of the $50 a month, Well, no, by then I was PFC, so I got, I forget the amount. And, I did that. And I don't remember, I think at the mill here, back then they were grinding soybeans. They paid a little more, so I went there and I got a job there. And I worked there one whole winter, in the fall. And then in January, there was a Standard Oil Company come around. They needed a bulk agent here in Kilkenny, to deliver fuels to the farmers and all that. So they kind of talked me into taking that job, so I had to buy a truck. In 1948, that was it. I bought a brand new truck. And I worked until 1957. Then I quit and I went back on construction. And then from 57 until I retired, I worked on construction. And like a lot of people that No offense, but there's a lot of people don't know how this construction stuff works. I was in highway construction, see, so we were building roads. When I started, it was on this highway between here and Lee Center, Highway 13 and 99. Well, that hasn't been rebuilt since then. That was 1957.